We've discussed this many times in the past. In life, focus is essential. If you're focused, you have a chance to notice things and see value, which can be very beneficial to the person or to others. If you're not focused, as we say, if it's out of focus, you gloss over things, and there may be opportunities with situations which are advantageous on many levels, which you miss. That's focus. And even if you notice things, to be able to appreciate their innate value on the person, to the person himself.
Who is it?
You have to reflect.
Thank you.
You have to
Marisha?
reflect on what those things may be.
Fish.
You have to be able to reflect on what those things may be. Why? Why is reflection so important?
I'm bringing it up.
Rabbeinu Yonah writes in his work Shari Tshuva that you have people, you hear a word of Musar and you're touched. But even though you're touched, if you don't reflect on what you hear, it doesn't go beyond the moment, and then you go on doing other things. But if you stop and you reflect on those words, which you were touched initially by, over time, you're able to internalize those concepts and those values that you were touched by. But if you don't reflect on them, it just passes on. Just passes. So two things you need. You need focus, then you need reflection. Like I always say, there are many things we believe without a question. But because we don't reflect on them and we don't allow them to percolate in our minds and our emotion, therefore, our lives don't change much. The example I always give, we have the 13 tenets of Jewish belief, which are essential for a Jew to have a share in the world to come. One of the tenets is reward and punishment. That if you do mitzvah, you'll be rewarded.
In the fridge.
Transgress is
put
liability.
Put stuff in the fridge?
No.
There's liability. We say in Pirkei Avos, when you do a mitzvah, schar b'ayom alekom. The innate value of a mitzvah is so immense that there's not enough years of time in life that you're able to be compensated for one mitzvah. So the question is, why are we pursuing mitzvahs? Answer is, it's conceptual. It's arm's length from our lives. But we don't internalize it. If we'd internalize it, we value other things that we're touched by that, and it's something which we desire, we'd live our lives differently. So you have two things. First, you need focus, not to be distracted. And even if you're not distracted, you have to be able to internalize it, and which comes through reflection. And even reflection is, you can only reflect if you're not distracted. That's why meditation, be going to a state of solitude, seclusion, to be able to meditate without distraction. The moment we entered into Canaan, into the promised land, immediately we had certain obligations. For instance, the law is that produce that grows in Israel, the grains, certain fruits, before you are permitted to eat them, you must tithe them. And there are a number of tithes that have to be given. The first tithe is given to the Kohen. 10% is given to the Levi. Then again, you take 10%, which some years you give to the poor, some years you take tithe in Yerushalayim. It has sanctity. That's what you do. That obligation was immediate. What about if you make dough? The Torah says, when you enter the land, you must tithe the dough, which is called challah. That portion of the dough goes to the Kohen, as the first tithing of grain and produce goes to the Kohen. But yet Bikurim, which we'll discuss in a moment, which is the mitzvah of this week's reading, the word Bikurim comes from the word Bechor. Bechor is the firstborn. That was only came into obligation in the 15th year of our entry into the land. First, let's talk, what is Bikurim? You live in an agricultural society, you have the farmer. Torah says, when the farmer sees the first fruits ripening, the first grains ripening, he must immediately earmark that to be ultimately that when it fully ripens, he's going to bring that as a gift to God to the Temple Mount. And the one to receive the gift on behalf of God is the Kohen, because Kohen is the lead of the Jewish people and he is God's officiant. You give him that tithe. It's called Bikurim, from the word Bechor. So like the first of the fruits, the first of the grains. But when you bring the Bikurim, when you bring these grains, you make a declaration of gratitude to God for all that he's done to us, for us. From the moment Yaakov established a family, and how he's pursued initially by Lavan, his father, who would have killed him, because he had fled suddenly, and if not for God's intervention, he told Yaakov openly, I would have killed you. But God said, I'm not permitted. I have to lay off. Then we went to Egypt. Then we went out of Egypt. God redeemed us. Then he took us to the land, gave us the land. This is the produce of the land that you have given us. And it's a very specific declaration. It's called Kriyas Bikurim. You make a declaration of the new fruits. You give thanks to God to express your gratitude for all God had done for you. So it's an expression of gratitude. Now, to be appreciative, you have to fully encompass to what degree you're a beneficiary. Let's say a person's distracted and you don't reflect on what you received. To what degree you're a beneficiary. The sense of gratitude is not the same. I'll give you an example. A person asks me a question, a very fundamental question in whatever it may be, in the Talmud or in Jewish belief, whatever, and I give him an answer immediately. And the answer is the right answer. And the question bothered him. So the person says to me, he's a smart person, he says, Rabbi, I get it. I got another question to ask. I say to the person, before you ask me the next question, if this question bothers you that much and now you're getting an answer, you should be touched by that answer to reflect and understand why that answer addresses the original question. But if the person says, I got another question, he's on to something else. That answer, although it's the right answer and it's fundamental to change his life, if he doesn't stop and reflect on it and he's not touched by it, it has very little value to that person's life because he's on to something else. Rabbi, what else do you have to say? You're a trove of knowledge. What else do you have to offer? Why don't you first reflect on the first thing I said and get excited about it? Because if you understood its value, you're going to go on to something else. So reflection and understanding the value of something will make the difference if it makes a difference. Very fundamental. When we entered into the land of Israel, there was 7 years of conquest. It took us 7 years to conquer the land. After the 7 years of conquest, there were 7 years which we divided the land among the tribes. When you're involved in war, in conquest, tremendous distraction. When you divide the land till you're settled in your location, each tribe receiving its portion, each person within the tribe receiving his plot of land, and be able to establish yourself. Tremendous amount of distraction. To be able to focus on to what degree you're a beneficiary of what God did for you throughout history, and you arrived at this moment, if the distraction is overwhelming, you cannot be appreciative sufficiently to make this declaration of appreciation. So therefore, when it comes to the Bikurim, when you bring the first of your fruit, which is the best of the farmer, to offer to God as an expression of gratitude, it has to be accompanied by the declaration to express your thankfulness. It has to be in a setting where you fully could comprehend and internalize the value of what God did for you. So before 14 years passed, which is conquest and dividing, there's too much distraction. So God says, once a year, you have an obligation to express that gratitude. But when you're in a tranquil setting, when you're not distracted, the turmoil is not going on. There's no longer war, and now you're settled. That's why, in regard to the tithing of the produce, that's immediate. Because that has nothing to do, that's the innate holiness of the produce that grows in Israel. You tithe the bread. It has to do just the reality of the bread. The first of your battle you give to the Kohen. Here at the Bikurim, the whole value is to bring your best as an expression of gratitude. So that's something you have to internalize to appreciate. And God wants you to maximize on that appreciation, because if you realize to what degree you're a beneficiary of God's beneficence, goodness, you're going to function as a different level of Jew as a result of that. Therefore, it's not immediate. It wasn't on the entry point. It's only once you settled in the land, only then did this obligation come about. That's number one. Now, you bring the Bikurim, you bring these new fruits, these new grains, and it's accompanied with a declaration of gratitude. When do you start bringing the Bikurim? What part of the year? Shavuos time. Shavuos is 50 days after Pesach. You start bringing the Bikurim because that's when the grains ripen, that's when the fruits ripen. Because this is the harvest season. You begin harvesting the new crops, the new grains. And when you make the declaration, it's from Shavuos through Sukkot. After Sukkot, although you have to bring the tithe, because it has this innate holiness, one doesn't make the declaration any longer. Why? What's the reason? Because it says you have to bring it with joy. Unless you sense the value of what God gave you, you can't express that level of gratitude. When a person is harvesting, it's a sense of joy for the farmer. That's interesting. Based on a verse of prophets, the 6 sections of the Talmud is identified by another word of the verse. The Talmud is divided into 6 sections. The first section is called Zeroim. We speak about the laws of plantings. Zeroim. The verse in the prophets, which refers to the first section of the Talmud, is called Emunah. Emunah is belief. Belief. Why is Zeroim? That relates to agricultural laws which pertain in Israel, whether it's what you have to give to the Kohen, or the 10%, or you're not permitted to crossbreed crops, all this. It's referred to as, it's called Emunah. Let's say a farmer has the best quality soil, he has the best quality seed, and it doesn't rain. A farmer, just due to his vocation, he better believe in God or believe in something. Because if it doesn't rain, he could have everything going for him, but nothing's happening. So he hopes and prays to God that there's going to be rain. And even if there is rain, it should rain sufficiently. And even rain sufficiently. You have blight, and you have other issues. What about if there's locusts, or there's other infestations, which the crop may be destroyed? You may have hurricane winds, which may destroy the crop. Till the farmer is able to bring in his harvest, continuously, he's praying to God. It first should grow, it should succeed, and ultimately, he should be able to put the money in the bank. He should bring in the harvest. Therefore, the first section of the Talmud is called Emunah. The farmer has that tremendous belief and faith in God for things to work out. And just the vocation itself engenders and directs him to where he has to look for that kind of hope, and that's prayer, and that's God. If it's emunah. You know, a person counts the receivables at the end of the day, and he sees how much he brought in. He's all excited. Calls his wife, says, "You know what we made today? It's unbelievable." But once he makes the deposit in the bank, the excitement wanes. It's not exciting any longer. As long as the harvest season is going on, we talk about making the declaration, and it says, "V'samach l'fnei Hashem Elokecho," and you rejoice when you make these declarations with joy, because the money is just pouring in. The grain is there, the fruits are there, your harvest season. Once this harvest season's over and you have everything is in your silo and you're ready, it's like, it's history, as they say. It doesn't take too long that it should be history. That feeling of gratitude, of beholdenness is no longer there. As a result of that, after Sukkot, you may have to bring the new fruits, the new grains, but the declaration is no longer said. Because the declaration has to be said with a sense of gratitude and joy, which that no longer exists. Once you have it all, you've already taken it in. Okay, that's the concept. I always ask a question. Why is it so difficult to find people who are appreciative? The average person is not appreciative. And I'm not talking about thank you. Thank you, no thank you. I'm not talking about that. Gratitude means, appreciation means, the person being a recipient of somebody else's kindness or favor, it touches him that he will reciprocate. Now, the Hebrew language is a very descriptive language. The English language or any other language, well, this word in Latin means that, or in Old French it means that, whatever it means. Give you an example, appreciative. What does appreciation mean? We know what it means. But what is the basis for appreciation? We don't know. In Hebrew, we know exactly, do you know how you say a person is appreciative? Makir tova. You recognize that you're a recipient of the goodness of another person. That's how you say appreciation in Hebrew. Makir means recognition of the goodness. The way God created a human being, that if you recognize that you were a recipient of somebody else's goodness, you will reciprocate. That's a reality. It's like you put your hand in warm water, you feel the warmth of the water because you have certain nerve endings. When you recognize that you're a beneficiary of somebody else's goodness, kindness, you're going to reciprocate. Appreciation means you are a beneficiary, you're going to reciprocate. But what about a person is not makir tova? I'll give you an example. Person works for a company and he's a rainmaker. And he gets a bonus, exceptional bonus. And he's able to buy himself a country home. Without that bonus, he couldn't buy it. So his wife says, you must be very thankful to this, to your boss, to your employer. He gave you this bonus. Thankful. What do you think he gave me the bonus for? If I would have been a rainmaker, he wouldn't give it to me. Therefore, I don't have to, there's no sense of gratitude. He should have gratitude to me. I don't have to have gratitude to him. You understand? It may be true what the person's saying. They're not going to give you a bonus unless you add value to the company. But factually, the times, although you're the rainmaker, they don't give you the bonus. And even though it's true, I'm still a beneficiary of what they gave me. And I'm able to afford to buy the house because they gave me a job and I have employment. So if you recognize that, you're going to reciprocate, and you'll be even more dedicated because you appreciate what they did for you. So the question is, why is it so difficult to be appreciative? King Solomon tells us in Mishlei, in Proverbs, it's all psychological. Eved lo v'lishmalveh. If you're a borrower and you have a lender, the borrower is enslaved to the lender. You're a debtor. You're a debtor. A debtor is indebted to the lender. The debtor is indebted to the creditor. You know what it means to be indebted? Nobody wants to be indebted. I don't want debt. I want to be free of debt. If appreciation means that I recognize I'm a beneficiary of somebody else's goodness and kindness, that means I'm indebted to you. Naturally, the person doesn't want to be indebted. I want to be a free man. I don't want to carry a burden of debt. So if there's any way where he could put it, frame it, and see it through a lens, it's not that I'm a debtor. The person is tremendous pushback, subconscious pushback. He sees it differently. You may see that I should appreciate it. I see it differently. As they say in the vernacular, I have a different spin on it. That may be your spin. My spin is different. But the reason is because a person doesn't want that level of indebtedness. I'll give you an example. Adam. Adam's created the handiwork of God. God puts him in the Garden of Eden. God says it's one of a kind of beauty. It's paradise in the true sense. It says you can eat of every fruit of this garden. One tree, though. Don't eat of one tree. And if you eat, you're going to destroy this world. Adam goes, flexes his muscle. Even though God said no, somehow he justified yes. If God gave you the world on a platinum platter and you're on a pedestal, how do you behave this way? It's unconscionable behavior. You know why? Because I'm a free man. Free means I do as I choose, as I please. To recognize that you gave me everything and I'm only on the taking end, and I don't have freedom to do as I want, a person has pushback from that. Person doesn't swallow so easy. Adam framed it as he wanted to frame it to justify eating of the tree of knowledge. We find that for 40 years, God gave us manna in the desert. Without the manna, we couldn't have survived. In the 40th year, this is the new generation. The old generation all passed away. All of a sudden, they come up with a bug in their head. They come to Moshe and said, you know, we've been eating this food for 40 years, this wafer-like food. It provided nourishment, anything we wanted, it should be. But you know something, for 40 years, we haven't done our bodily functions. And if that's the case, we're concerned. Maybe ultimately, this food is going to expand in our intestines and we're going to die from it. Hear this? You've been existing and subsisting on it in a very healthy way for 40 years. Nobody's ever died from it. All of a sudden now they say, it's been 40 years. Does it make sense? We ingest it, take it in, nothing goes out. It had to go somewhere. Eventually, our intestines are going to burst. And oh, we're going to die. God says, you know, you people, you're ingrates who descend from an ingrate. Who was the first ingrate who walked the face of this earth? Adam. Adam was the first ingrate. Why was he ingrate?
Because she had his wife.
God created a wife for him. Chava. That was his wife. And what was her value? To be his helpmate, to assist him to achieve perfection. After he eats of the tree of knowledge, God says, why did you eat? He says, God, it's your fault. You gave me the wife. The woman you gave me. What? The woman I gave you? You know, Adam, you're an ingrate. Rather than recognize it, it's your failing, you point the finger of blame at God. You're an ingrate. You don't appreciate it. You don't recognize what I gave you. I gave you the world on a silver platter or a platinum platter. Then after you throw it back at me, that I'm the cause of your failure. We, after 40 years saying the way we behaved it, you're descendants of your ingrates who descend from the ingrate. There's a certain innate characteristic in every human being, because our fiber is, the DNA is Adam's DNA. Every one of us possess this negative Achilles heel called ingrate. That's a reality. But how could you talk this way? It's obvious It's not what you say. The answer is because I have a right to see the way I want to see it. Because I'm free. I'm a free man. I'm beholden to no one. And I have a right to put whatever spin I want on it. Because if I put the spin on it the way you want me to see it, then I'm fully subservient to you and indebted to you. And I'm shackled. I'm shackled to the debt. Nobody wants to be shackled to any debt. That's why people have difficulty being appreciative, because they're indebted. Therefore, a person who is appreciated and he does reciprocate, it's a very positive quality. Because if it's the right thing, I want to do the right thing. I always give the example. There's a person who's in need, truly in need. And I go to one person, I said, and I explained that this person needs financial assistance because he's truly in need. And I say to a person, would you want to help him? He says, look, if he's truly in need, I'm able to help, I would want to help. You go to another person, he says, do you know the man? So you say, yes. I said, why are you getting involved? This person who I'm asking, why are you getting involved? Do you have anything to gain by helping him? If there's nothing to gain, why complicate your life? What do you mean, what complicate? If the man is in need, help him. No, unless there's a payback, you don't help. What's the difference between these two people? One person is giving if he's in need and I could help, and he's truly in need, I'm happy to help. The other person says, unless there's something in it for him, he's not there to assist. There has to be a payback. He's not giving unless there's a return. If there's no return, I'm not complicating my life. A person who's appreciative, who could assume the debt and be beholden, because that's the right thing to do, that's a positive characteristic. That's a very positive quality. The person who sees it, who evades that reality and sees it backwards, so to say, doesn't want to see it, it's a very negative characteristic. The Torah says, something? A Jew has to have an exercise in appreciation, whether you like it or not. You live in an agricultural society. The first fruits, the first grains that ripen, you must tag them. And when they're ready to be picked, you must bring it as a gift to Yerushalayim, to the Temple Mount, to give it as a gift to God and express an expression of appreciation. And there's a declaration. You make the declaration. All that God did for you. And you prostrate yourself in the sanctuary after you make this declaration. Why is God putting us through that? I'll tell you a story. When the Yad Avram started, and we were on 63rd Street, and Edmund Safra gave us the building, a brownstone, but it needed a tremendous amount of renovations. The Yad Avram people, although they were doing well, but the amount of money we needed to do that renovation, you needed very, very big dollars. So Mr. Glick, with one other person, put up all the money to do the renovation. Okay? Whatever, it was over $1 million. They put it up, we did it, beautiful renovation. If you remember the building. And then afterwards, Mr. Glick says to the group, I've been carrying this, underwriting all expenses, salaries this. From now on, you people are going to start assuming responsibility, financial responsibility. Not that I can't, but I'm doing you a favor because by you assuming responsibility for something that you value, I'm going to condition you to be able to become charitable. Because if a person doesn't give charity, it doesn't come out of a vacuum. You have to be mentored to give charity. You start at a lesser amount. Next year, you give a little bit more. And as you participate in tzedakah, you'll become true philanthropists because you could afford it. It's not they can't afford it, but it's a process. So putting a person in a position that he can't evade that reality, that positive involvement impacts positively on the person, that now he's inclined to be attracted to do more of the same. God says once a year, a person naturally doesn't want to be a debtor. He doesn't want to be beholden. He doesn't want to feel a debt of gratitude. Therefore, he always evades it. God says once a year, you live in an agricultural society, you must take the first of your produce, whether it's fruits, whether it's grain, you put it in a basket, and it's the most special to the farmer. What's most special, you bring to God. You make a declaration, which the declaration is the words that are prescribed by God. And you prostrate yourself in the holiest location where God's presence dwells. And then it says, and then you rejoice all the good that God has given you. So what is it? It's a process. That process, being so profound and impactful, will automatically affect you, that throughout the year you'll see things through that same lens. You'll see the benefit of being a debtor. It's the right thing. Because if you feel indebted to God, whatever you do you're going to be the beneficiary. So when you're indebted to someone else, it's questionable. In what way you're a beneficiary? Only because you're a quality person. But when you're indebted to God and you do the right thing, you become a greater beneficiary, because by doing the right thing, you're even worthy, deserving of more reward. That advances your position. So this exercise, what we call bringing the new fruits, making the declaration, and very specifically prescribed as the Torah prescribes it, it's an exercise in gratitude, and you will frame everything ultimately through the lens of gratitude. And you'll be beholding and something very positive. Okay? That's the concept. The Midrash says something interesting. Based on a verse in Tehillim, Moshe Rabbeinu had foreseen that the Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed. And if the temple is destroyed, the context or the location to bring the Bikurim is not going to exist. So how are people going to go through this yearly exercise of expressing gratitude? It's not going to exist. And it's going to be a detriment. Because unless you hone that ability to be appreciative, to be makir tova, to recognize the good that you're a beneficiary, eventually it dries up. So how do you keep it alive? And that lens is always going to be clear. So the Medrash says, you know what Moshe Rabbeinu did? He legislated that a Jew has to pray 3 times a day. 3 times a day you have to pray. Since he had foreseen the Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed and Bikurim, you will not be able to bring Bikurim any longer, he prescribed the Jew has to pray Ma'ariv, Shachris, and Mincha 3 times a day. Okay? The question is, what does one thing have to do with another? You're not able to bring Bikurim any longer. Now you're going to pray 3 times a day. How does that somehow in any way touch upon and clarify that lens of appreciation, of beholdens, of gratitude? But evidently it does. Why? Very interesting. Person's born endowed with a superior IQ. So you're smart. What it takes you a moment to figure out takes other people months to figure out. You have a very special endowment. But despite that endowment, every day when you say in the Amidah, the first blessing of supplication is Atochonin lo das. You endow man with discretion. We're asking you, you should endow us with understanding and so on and so forth. I have it naturally. What am I asking for the endowment? You know why? Because maybe the only reason why you have it now is because God keeps willing that you should have it. Now, sometimes you have people in Wall Street, they're rainmakers. And all of a sudden, the person has a dry run. The decisions he's making aren't You're only as good as you are at that moment. The moment the profits start coming because you made a few bad decisions, you're out. Especially if you cost the company money. So why did you have the clarity and that sense? You thought it was you. It's not you. Well, it's a dry spell. You endow man with discretion, insight, and understanding. Graciously give it to us. So if you say that, what happens? You don't take it for granted. A person is in good health. Take it for granted. Only God forbid if something should happen, the person all of a sudden starts appreciating what he didn't appreciate initially. God heal us. Keep us healthy. Bless us. I've hedged against inflation 29 times over. You understand? You could hedge from today forever. Unless if God wants you to lose everything, you lose it in a moment. We ask God for blessing, for financial blessing. You can't take anything for granted. So the moment you start seeing things through that lens, automatically you understand it's just on happenstance why you have it. The reason why you have it is because God willed that you should have it. And if a person has that level of understanding, then there's gratitude. I have it because God gives it. Proof of the pudding is because I'm asking that God should continue to do it. Should heal me, should bless me, should endow me. And this is 3 times a day. Why do we pray 3 times a day? You know, as we say people have short memories. It's not from month to month or year to year. It's hour to hour. You wake up in the morning, you pray. You have a phenomenal morning. Grand slam every decision. Comes lunchtime, your ego is so inflated, nobody can even talk to you. That's how pompous you become. You have to daven mincha. You go daven mincha, you say, you're refocusing. Nah, it's not me, it's God. That's what it is. And you have a great afternoon. When you're going to put your head down on the pillow at night, the pillow's not going to be big enough for your head. That's how swollen your head's going to be. Before you go to sleep, you say Ma'ariv, the evening service. Again, God, it's you, it's not me. You blessed me, it's not me. You healed me, it's not me. It's not the vitamins I take, it's not the diet I have, it's not the gym I go to, it's not the doctor I have. It's not my nutritionist. It's not my chiropractor. It's not the farm, the funny farm out in Texas somewhere you can go to. Canyon Ranch, it's not that either. It's none of that. It's because God endows you with health, with a healthy constitution. That's why. So it's a continuous refocusing that what you have, it's because God wills you should have it. As a result of that, the tefillah compensates for the bikurim, which is a declaration of appreciation, of gratitude. Praying 3 times a day is the equivalent of that. It keeps it in focus. Let's keep things straight. Let's not get off track. And we get off track very easily. Off track, give you an example. A person is on Zoom every day for classes, and you're really touched. Person takes a break, 3-week vacation, he goes to Europe. And he's out of touch. When he comes back in 3 weeks, it's not the same way as when he left. He's not as sensitized. He came because there was a detachment, he's slightly desensitized. He has to reacclimate himself to a degree. What happened? The answer is we have short memories. Unless it's an ongoing process, an ongoing focus. A person wears lenses or glasses. Every once in a while, you have to clean those lenses. Otherwise, they get smudged. They have the other thing on it. And it has to be cleaned. You don't clean them, you can't see. But the lens, I saw perfectly last week, but you haven't cleaned the lens the past 2 weeks. How do you expect to see clearly through those lenses? You have to continuously maintain. There's a maintenance program. The maintenance program is to maintain a cognizance of the reality, because man naturally forgets. Why do we naturally forget? Because a man naturally doesn't want to be a debtor. We want to be free. Therefore, there's a continuously reinvigoration, a re-infusion of attention and focus. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu, because he had foreseen that the Beis Hamikdash would be destroyed. And the mitzvah of Bikurim, which is a very fundamental and profound exercise in gratitude, it's not going to be there any longer. Well, how do you compensate for that? Not pray once a day, but 3 times a day. That every juncture of the day, whether you succeed or fail, it's not you, but it's what God wants to be. And that keeps it in focus. And as a result of that, you'll be able to be fully focused on the reality of what your life is. We're going to stop here and continue tomorrow.